Hello and welcome. I have for you today the ASUS Zenbook A14. As the ad states, this is the world's lightest Copilot Plus PC, and this laptop weighs just under 1 kilogram, comes powered by the Snapdragon X series processor with Windows for ARM. It is a 14-inch machine. We're going to be looking at it in this review now, and we're going to talk about what ASUS has done right, what is happening with Snapdragon almost nearly a year later after their laptops broke onto the scene with so much fuss and hype, and buying into Snapdragon, does it make sense for you now until late 2025? Before we do that, a quick disclaimer. This laptop was purchased with my own money. Despite that, all of the thoughts and opinions you'll hear in this video will be entirely my own, and none have been privy to editorial review of the content found here in this video. If you'd like to purchase any of the products that I review, please check the description boxes below. I often put links there accompanied with discount codes to help you save a little bit of money. And also, if you'd like to go a little bit further to help support the channel, please click on the coffee link in the description below to help the channel out. It's a small gesture, but it goes a long way for independent creators such as myself.
The bottom panel of this device includes some grating here, and it's actually very fine grating and some small fans. They're actually tiny compared to what we're used to with traditional gaming laptops here, but they're sufficient to draw enough air and push enough airflow to keep this thing cool under load. The Zenbook A14 here is a weight champ in terms of weight here, 2.022 pounds, or just a featherweight 969 grams in your bag. The Zenbook A14 here offers a good selection of ports. On the left-hand side of the device, we have an HDMI 2.1 port, full-size HDMI, then followed by two USB Type-C ports with DisplayPort alt mode and up to 65 watts charging. This device only needs a 65 watt power adapter, and these are 40 gigabits per second USB 4 ports. We then have that followed by a microphone headphone combo jack and an LED which indicates power status as well as charging status for the device. If we look over on the left-hand or the right-hand side of the device, we have a lone singular USB Type-A port. However, this one is, nicely pointed with the USB 3.1 Gen 2 speeds at 10 gigabits per second, which is fantastic. It'll give us plenty of bandwidth for connecting our peripherals and even an external hard drive. And on the bottom here, just one thing to point out, the rubber feet, and this seems to be a trend for 2025, are getting more, more obtrusive. They're getting larger, longer, bigger. They jut out more from the body. Something to keep in mind in order to keep these devices cool in 2025. We have this in a beautiful gray finish here. So this one is a Cera aluminum, which is a ceramic aluminum composite material here. It looks great, has a nice texture to it. The lid has this ASUS Zenbook branding, and it kind of shimmers in light. It's just a silver holographic label there. The keyboard deck here is beautiful. It has these nice square shaped keys that we've seen on other ASUS keyboards from the past. And we have this accented new ASUS logo here, which looks very, astronomical. And I love the design of this look in the top right corner. And of course, we have a little bit of an inset keyboard here with beautifully designed, kind of bezels here around the keyboard to house it into the body of the display. And being that this is a Snapdragon lead processor, we do have the labeling here on the left hand side. We get a red Snapdragon X, so this is the base in the series. So Snapdragon X, Snapdragon X Plus, and Snapdragon X Elite. So this is the last of the Snapdragon X series to come onto the scene here for Windows for ARM PCs, and that is what is encompassed in this particular laptop with 8 cores. We got a little bit of sticker work here, and of course, being that this is a Snapdragon laptop, this is a Copilot Plus PC, and so you're going to have a Copilot key dedicated, and of course, the Microsoft Copilot companion is on board here as well. And up top here, to continue the biometrics, we have a Windows IR capable Windows Hello IR capable webcam up top here with Windows framing and all of that AI usage here to get you better, webcam communications for your meetings and such. And this is a test of the camera that's built into the ASUS A14 here. So this is the Snapdragon, basically the base level Snapdragon processor, and this has 8 cores on board. It has some integrated graphics as well. So we can see here that it's using those AI chops here to do that auto framing for the webcam, and the audio quality and the video quality. Let me know what you think of it, but I think it seems pretty good here because we've got that AI noise cancellation. We've also got auto framing here, and we've also got some sort of video effects that are happening here that are also part of Windows that can be tuned, and Windows Studio effects, and more to come on that in the next coming years. So fairly good effort here at 1080p 30 fps. You're not going to be complaining about doing your meetings or chatting with family and friends, but it's certainly not a professional level camera, I would say, and it certainly is not up there in terms of the resolution as we've seen from many other providers now giving 1440p or even up to 4K cams or even 5 megapixel 4K cams in their laptop. The ASUS Zenbook A14 is powered by the Snapdragon Qualcomm processor. This is the Snapdragon X series here. So this one is the Snapdragon X. There's also an X Plus and an X Elite, which is the top. This one here comes with 8 cores here, running at a base clock of 32 megahertz here. And we can see here that those 8 cores can clock way down. These are not hyper-threaded cores. They're just straight up 8 cores, and they can clock way down to 1 gigahertz to give us that power efficiency. So we can prolong that battery life and of course get that all the usage out of this. There is also an onboard NPU here for all of those AI workloads. However, that is not being fully utilized yet by things like Olama and LM Studio. I hope that that will come soon. And of course, there's a GPU on board here to provide some gaming chops, and it can share up to 8 gigabytes of VRAM here. And if you look at the actual system memory itself, we're getting very fast 8448 mega transfers per second RAM here. Capacity on this device and new unit is 16 gigabytes as configured. And if we look at the overall performance here, the performance is not bad. Again, you have to keep in mind what this is intended for. This is basically a MacBook Air equivalent for the Windows ecosystem using the Windows for ARM and the Snapdragon processors here. So you're going to be looking at, low power tasks, not high-end demanding gaming. But I did run some benchmarks here. Of course, there are some benchmarks such as this one with Passmark that run into issues here because they're not natively designed for ARM, and that becomes an issue. However, it was able to run most of these benchmarks without much of an issue, despite them having to go through the translation layer. But of course, as you can see here, the results as a consequence of having to be translated and not being native ARM softwares is actually quite low. The overall performance over across all of these different areas that Passmark tested did not give us any, confidence in terms of the overall scores and the overall usability of this device here, except for the memory. You can look at the memory is excellent. The disk mark here is also excellent as well. The SSD performance was pretty on par. We've looked at the user benchmark here. Their relevant rating we're in the 81st percentile, so it's not that bad overall. And if you look at here with the Blender benchmark, and of course with Cinebench, we got some pretty good performance here. So just keep your expectations in check, and I think overall CPU performance won't let you down. It's not going to be the speediest processor out there, nor the highest boosting. But again, that comes at the benefit of excellent battery life and basically a silent machine that almost never spins up the fans. You almost never hear them in operation.
The display choice that ASUS has made for this laptop I think is quite fitting. This is a 1900 by 1200 resolution display, 1200p, which is very suitable for a 14-inch display. It means you're going to get plenty crisp and sharp text. Anything beyond that, you're basically just taxing the screen and the CPU and the GPU resources unnecessarily because you won't really benefit on such a small screen size. You're going to have very high DPI, pixels per inch nonetheless. So that said, we're going to test the brightness here. So we're going to start with all the way down to 0% brightness on the backlight, and then we'll slowly turn it all the way up. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and 100% brightness. So we see here that at 100% brightness, this is quite bright. It is about a 400 nits plus display. So you're not going to have any issues with reflections here, despite the screen being glossy. So you can see here that there are reflections with the lights overhead here. So if you're not positioned just right, that is an issue that you will face.
And because the device is so light, one hand opening is actually quite a breeze. It's very easy to do and quick. Also, there is some screen reflections though, but if you angle it just right, you can get away with it for the most part, and it's not really that distracting. And if you look here at the backlight bleed, when we boot from a cold boot situation, the backlight bleed is actually not present. It's actually quite an excellent screen because we have OLED. You're not going to get any backlight here. Blacks are true blacks, and that is the joy of having OLED displays. So this is a familiar feature, and we love to see this on the ASUS Zenbook 14. A14 makes it such a premium device.
And we see here that being a glossy display, we get nice and punchy colors, beautiful deep greens here, and nice yellows and oranges and bright reds on the actual train here. So you're going to get very beautiful colors for content consumption. This device is going to be a total joy. You're going to have a fun time here watching movies, enjoying all kinds of content on this, of course including gaming as well. However, there is big caveats about gaming, and we'll talk about that in a later section about GPU and gaming performance.
The overall SSD performance here was decent. We have a 512 gigabyte device that's installed here, and we got some very fast Gen 4 read speeds here. There's a single slot, so if you want to upgrade, you'll have to replace the actual SSD in this device. It's a 2280. The only other thing that can be upgraded when this device is the Wi-Fi card. ASUS only provided Wi-Fi 6E here, I guess to save a few dollars. I would have loved to see Wi-Fi 7 here paired with the latest standards. And as a matter of fact, we only get Bluetooth 5.3 here as well.
The keyboard deck here, the keyboard itself, the keys are nice and punchy. They have good tactility. They have good feedback overall. The display is gorgeous. The bezels are very thin, akin to what we'd like to see. A very modern look for 2025 as we'd love to see. I would love to have seen a fingerprint reader integrated into this, either this ASUS button up here or integrated into the power button itself. ASUS seems to have omitted that. Considering the price point of this laptop, I would really have liked to have multiple options for biometric authentication. Trackpad here is a nice size. You can do all of your multi-touch gestures without much issue. It's nice and smooth. As you can see, I haven't even removed the plastic and it still tracks pretty well. So it's a fantastic trackpad here. I've had zero complaints over the last month or so that I've actually been using this and testing this laptop exhaustively. Because it is so light, it is so easy to pull out and carry at any time, which makes the usability of this device, truly on, par none or bar none with any other laptop that I own. It's not heavy, it's light, it's easy to tuck away, it's quick to pull out, it resumes very quickly because of that Snapdragon X processor and that ARM design. However, there are still some issues with the software here. Let's talk about what those are next. And this is my ASUS, the application that's used to administer this laptop. From the home screen, you can get a quick at-a-glance view of what's happening on the device. Click over to the device settings and you have a few different options here: battery care, fan profile, hibernate, AI noise cancellation, adjusting your sound modes, and OLED quick care for that gorgeous screen. And of course, you can scroll all the way down here to go through your settings or hop over by selecting these particular sub-menus here. So it's a nice enough application that allows you to quickly adjust the settings that you need to personalize the way that you experience this PC and the ASUS A14 for yourself. Now, speaking of software, it is still a mixed bag. It feels very much like the era when Apple moved from the Intel CPUs and processors and NVIDIA to their own Apple silicon with the M1 Max. When the M1 MacBook Pro or MacBook Air, excuse me, released on the scene, this was the issue that there was many softwares that were not compatible. So basically, if you were used to the old Intel ecosystem, you had a few troubles up at that point. So if we look like it seems very much that Snapdragon and Qualcomm sits exactly at the same stage today. Despite having a translation layer, which does although make many apps work today, and there's many that have been translated natively to ARM, there's still many applications you can imagine because the ecosystem for Windows applications is much broader than traditionally the Apple ecosystem had been up until that M1 series migration. Of course, Apple's rise in popularity has led to many more applications being available on their platform, but this also is going to be a challenge for Windows because traditionally they're just seen as Windows apps. If you and I or a student, somebody goes to the store, sees a Snapdragon X equipped laptop, it says Windows on it, we're going to assume that it's a Windows laptop and everything runs, and that is the caveat, and there needs to be a big disclaimer there to saying, hey, if you buy a Snapdragon X enabled laptop, you may have some issues. That said, though, things are moving quickly, and we've come a long way from the initial launch last year. So we are getting many applications now which have native support here. As you can see, we've got most of the major applications that you need for work, and of course for fun stuff and also your productivity work already available here. We also have Steam. You can install all of the launchers as I have done. So I can show you here that I do have Steam installed on this laptop. However, not all of the games play as natively as you would like to see. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the gaming segment.
As for gaming here, I tested first with a few different games. This is Titan Quest 2, so we're using the low preset here with ZSS. I also tested it with FSR 3.0 and also, with frame generation turned on for FSR. And basically the low preset at 1080p resolution, the 1200p native resolution of this display, I was getting, in the teens in terms of frame rates, totally not playable at all. And you can see here that there's some texturing, some texture load and other pop-in and kind of effects and shimmering happening on the display. Even turning this down to to 720p was not able to yield some good playable results here. So not a good start off for in terms of gaming for the Snapdragon based processor here. As we move on over to Shadow of the Tomb Raider, again we tested here with medium settings initially at 1080p resolution. I was expecting more out of this game because this is a much older title, but despite that, when we run here with a lot of the different settings here turned down to medium at the native panels resolution here, we don't have DLSS available to us here because obviously this is not an NVIDIA GPU, but we can however use Intel ZSS. With that set to balance, we're getting again in the teens, so not really a playable frame rate, although if you really wanted to struggle through it, I suppose you could play at this resolution at this frame rate. However, certainly not recommended as for a good gameplay type of experience. And in addition, we also saw lots of frame tearing and frame stuttering, obviously because our frame rates are so low. Keep in mind that there's very few games that are actually optimized for Windows for ARM, particularly that can run natively. So that is going to be a consideration if you're buying this device and you're thinking about or considering casual gaming. Certainly not with these AAA titles. My experience was not very good. Even in this portion of the benchmark here for Shadow of the Tomb Raider, a much older game, we're still getting only about 17 frames per second with plenty of screen tearing present. Now, I did do some studying online, and I found that people said if you turn the resolution down to 720p, then you can actually get this to run at near 30 FPS. So here it's running at 720p resolution, still only getting about 20 to 22, maybe 23 FPS. Not a very good playable frame rate here. So I also tested this with the low preset. It doesn't really matter which preset you use. I couldn't get it to go beyond 20 FPS in the average frame rates in the benchmark at least. So not a playable experience for Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Now let's move on to our last and third game here. So this is Cyberpunk. But first, installing the GOG installer, it does complain that x86 or x64 version is not available. So that means it's going to be running through emulation. But despite that, if you accept and click through the error message, we do get the GOG launcher to run. We can certainly sign in with our account and we can launch and play our games as usual without much of an issue there. The x86 64 translation layer seems to be working fine in that regard. So here we are, we're playing with the low preset with FSR 3.0 set to auto, and I ran a few different scenarios here with ZSS, with FSR 3. Of course, we don't get DLSS here, not being an NVIDIA GPU, but even running at the 720p resolution, again, as recommended in a few different resources online, setting this to 720p and using FSR 3 with frame generation enabled was only giving us about 25, 26 FPS or so. A little bit more playable, surprisingly, than Shadow of the Tomb Raider, but still not going to be a great experience if you want to play this game and totally enjoy it. Of course, the benchmark here is a little bit canned, so if you have variance on during the actual gameplay, you may get better or worse experience depending on what's happening on the screen. And particularly in heavy firefights, this is going to really drop a lot. And of course, if you look at the visuals here, it's very hard to show from this angle, but sitting in front of this laptop here, the visuals look very poor. There's anti-aliasing issues, there's softening issues running at this resolution, and I don't think anybody in 2025 should be buying this laptop to play games at 720p resolution.
So then, to conclude my thoughts about the ASUS Zenbook A14 and the Snapdragon X-equipped laptop here with Windows for ARM. Well, I think this is a step in the right direction, certainly with the form factor. The design is absolutely gorgeous. The lightweightness of this thing is, unmatched and unrivaled with all of the military grades, protection and mil standard A10H, all of that fun stuff that ASUS has thrown in here. The sound is fantastic. The Dolby Atmos speakers really live up to their naming. And of course, the display here is fantastic as well. With that 14-inch OLED display at 1080p, you get plenty of brightness, you get plenty of colors and punchiness, and of course, the battery life is unrivaled. There's nothing that can even touch these Snapdragon laptops right now, even within the x86, x64 space. So nothing from Intel or AMD can currently compete with the battery life that these laptops are delivering. So if you basically work either in Google Docs or spreadsheets all day, or use Microsoft Word, Acrobat, you do accounting, you're a student, you take notes, are you doing light productivity work, you're a writer, then all of those types of workloads very suited to this type of laptop where you don't need excessive amounts of power, particularly from the GPU department. But it's more than fast and speed enough that none of you are gonna notice that in your day-to-day unless you have many laptops side by side and you've tested them in the scenarios that I have. But this is targeted more at a mainstream audience that would traditionally buy a MacBook Air. So if you're one of those folks, but you want to stick with the Windows camp, this is going to be your Windows-based MacBook Air, although Windows for ARM. So take it for what it is, but that is the choices that have been made here and the compromises that you and I would have to live with if we were to buy into this laptop, and that's not a bad thing. And of course, with all of that said, if you like my content, please click the like button, please click subscribe, and click that notification bell so you're the first to know when there's new content available here. And always, if you're looking to purchase any of the devices that I review, check the links in the descriptions below. They're often paired with discount codes to help you save a little bit of money. And if you wish to go further to help support the channel, you can use the coffee link in the description below to help out the channel. It's a small gesture, but it really goes a long way to help independent creators such as myself. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.